1963, the quickest fender flappers now had new letters on their windows, SS, for SuperStock. This year, none of the Detroit car makers even tried to hide their sneaky stuff, not that they could have anyway. The aluminum nose Z11 Impalas were now punched out to 427 cubic inches. Pontiac went so far as to bore several dozen holes in their cars' frames to lighten them even more. Ford, still the fat kid on the block, used a combination of aluminum and fiberglass body parts to make weight.
I had the first 427 super lightweight Galaxy. That was a great car. That started the real high-performance 427 engine with that Galaxy I had.
By this time, Sox and Martin had become crowd favorites at racetracks all over the South. Finally, Buddy Martin had to make a choice. His day job as a railroad agent was getting in the way of his drag racing.
Finally, they approached me one day and said, you know, you've got to make up your mind. Do you want to work for Norfolk and Western, or do you want to go drag racing? And I said, I'll see you.
If Buddy and Ronnie had any worries about full-time drag racing feeding their respective bulldogs, they got an early vote of confidence.
A guy by the name of Jim Sartwell sent us a contract for $500 for a Friday night and a Sunday. And plus, they'd take care of the motel and the food and everything. And, man, we thought we had made it then.
With all that factory muscle thundered down drag strips all over America, the racers were moving ahead with even more radical rides for next year, like this little invention from Ford Motor Company, the Thunderbolt.
We were running down there with a fuel-injected Chevy at Connecticut Dragway, and of course that was a home track for the Lawton crew and Tasker and those guys. And so when this thing showed up, everybody just dropped their wrenches and ran out to watch it run.
Ford wasn't the only car company making headlines this year. In February of 1963, GM bailed out of racing, leaving their racing team stranded with no factory support and no hot parts to play with. One of those teams was Sox and Martin. Once again, Buddy Martin put on his management hat and got busy.
And I'd heard that Lincoln Mercury was going to build the Comets, and that supposedly Nicholson was getting one of them and didn't know what was going beyond that, and that Fran Hernandez was the one that was supposed to be heading up the program.
Buddy took a dinner meeting that night with Mercury's head of racing, Fran Hernandez, and offered their services for the '64 racing season.
So we went to dinner, and I explained to Fran, you know, showed him some of the things we'd done and what we hoped to do, and that we'd certainly like to work with him. And when we got back to the motel, he shook my hand and said, you know, we've got a deal.
When they lined him up at Pomona for the start of the 1964 season, there was a new red, white, and blue Mercury Comet in the lanes, with Ronnie Sox driving. But now, it didn't say SS on it. It sported a new class designation, AFX. Once again, that need for speed had stretched the rule book all out of shape. So there was nothing to do but start another class, Factory Experimental. This one would change the entire sport of drag racing. How weird can things get? Stick around on the American Muscle Car.
Sunday.